What is up, everyone? Guys, listen up. In today's video, we are going to be taking a look at the tier list for all of the premium warbonds within the game. We just got a new warbond added to the game, which is the Borderline Justice. And on top of that, we also had a patch that brought changes to a lot of weapons, which have definitely affected the warbond tier list. So after watching this video, you're going to have all the information you need in order to make the right decision on which warbonds are actually worth it, which warbonds you should pick up first. We're going to be looking into warbonds that give you the ability to create a bunch of different, very cool, fun, and at the same time, powerful builds for the highest difficulty within the game. Because let's be honest, if they can offer all of that for the highest difficulty, that means that those warbonds are also going to be very strong on the lower difficulties. First warbond that we're going to be talking about is going to be the Democratic Detonation. Now, I'm gonna be honest with you guys, this is one of the best warbonds within the game, hands down. So why do I say that? Well, we have the Thermites, obviously, which is one of the best tools, one of the best grenades within the game. If you're playing against the bots or even against the bugs, it's actually very, very strong. The fact that the Thermites can literally just delete such powerful enemies within the game is why I think it is such a game-changing item as well. So for example, if you're playing on the bug side, right, you just throw this at a charger, and as long as you land it, you're good to go. Bile Titans and Impalers as well. And as mentioned, it absolutely deletes the Hulks. So yeah, this one has a very high value when it comes to build crafting overall. We have the armor as well, which is engineering kit, further reduces recoil when crouching or prone. This is a pretty decent armor. Is it one of the best armors within the game? I personally don't think so, but it is still very decent. Then we have the Adjudicator, which in the current patch just received a damage buff. Now, I will say that even though it does feel better at the moment, the biggest problem the ARs have is ammo economy till this day. So yes, the damage buff was pretty nice and you're gonna feel it. I wish they would increase the magazine size of ARs. I feel like that would just make them so much more viable. Now, on the second page is where some absolute craziness begins, and that is going to be because of the ERUPTOR. I do believe it is in a very, very good spot. It deals with the bugs extremely well, even chargers or spewers, whatever it is. And keep in mind, it can close down bug holes as well. So you have a primary that can essentially do everything on the bug side, and on top of that, it is very, and I mean very powerful on the bot side as well. We're talking easy Hulk kills, easy clears on the berserkers or even devastators. It's just a great weapon at the moment within the game, and I feel like this ups the value of the warbond tremendously. And yes, there is a crazy thing going on with the ERUPTOR at the moment, when if you're shooting southwest and hitting at the target at that same time, it deals some crazy damage. Okay, like you can one-shot charger tails and so on. But even when they fix that, it's still gonna feel incredible simply because of the buff that it has received. So no matter what, right now, this thing is a beast. We also have the booster here, which is Expert Pilot, but honestly, nobody's ever using this. So this is not gonna be a reason for you to look at this warbond. On the third page, we have the armor, which is actually pretty good. Right, this is the anti-explosive armor, 50% resistance to explosive damage. This is actually pretty good against the bots. And then we also have two weapons that are complete game changers when it comes to build crafting, and that is going to be the CROSSBOW, which is incredible explosive radius, very high damage. It's pretty decent on ammo economy, and it also closes down bug holes. One of the coolest things, both for the CROSSBOW and for the ERUPTOR, is that they're very viable for every faction within the game, and it creates the openings for you to put together some really cool builds. Like for example, you don't have to worry about the support weapon being able to close down the bug holes, or you don't have to worry about the red stratagems doing so, right? It's just a primary, both of these, that do that without any issues. And on top of that, you have the grenade pistol, which essentially is a secondary weapon, but it does the same. Okay, which is kind of crazy. So overall, the Democratic Detonation easily goes to big PP tier. There is no doubt about it. If you're trying to pick up a warbond that is very powerful against every faction, it creates a lot of builds and has top tier weapon options, this is going to be one of your first picks across the board. There's no doubt about that. Okay, now let's talk about the chemical agents, because this right now is an absolute monster of a warbond, especially if you're playing against the bugs. And when it comes to the builds and just the effectiveness, of these war bonds, chemical agents is one of those. So on the first page right away, we have the gas grenade, which is the best crowd control item when it comes to the game. It's very, very powerful, confusing enemies and just not worrying about them for a long amount of time. And the fact that if you combine this with something like the supply backpack and you're just throwing them at all times, you can literally counter any kind of breach within the game with just the gas grenades. That's how powerful they are. Gas is ridiculous right now within the game. Now, the gas armor isn't something that is absolutely crazy, but you can create some cool builds. For example, you throw in a lot of gas grenades or like, the gas stratagems in general. You run in with the gas armor. You're not taking any damage. It's tons of fun. But once again, it's nothing crazy. On the second page, we have the sterilizer. Now, this has gone through a few buffs. In my opinion, it's still not viable right now to use. Still needs more. Essentially, I think what they're gonna have to do with this one is that it leaves some kind of cloud on the ground and then go from there, right? Because right now there's, as I said, so many better tools when it comes to crowd controlling that sterilizer isn't going to be something that you're going to be running a lot of the times. However, on the next page, we have something that you're going to be running a lot, especially if you're playing against the bugs, and that's going to be the gas rover. This thing is absolutely cracked against the enemies. Like, the AI is so smart, it like locks onto one guy, confuses him, then instantly goes to the other one. It's just easily one of the best tools within the game. This thing is incredible. Literally one of the most game-changing items within the game, especially if you like to play against the bugs. Like right there, if you see it, like it knows exactly what to do, right? Like it confuses one enemy, goes to the other one immediately. There's no time wasted, nothing. It's incredible. Another thing about the chemical agents is that you gotta keep in mind that it is a complete game changer when it comes to the new enemies that have been introduced by the bugs, and that is the predator enemies. The gas rover on its own makes it so much easier to deal with them, and the gas nades is also next level when it comes to the predator or even the gloom bugs as well. So we're gonna drop the chemical agents into big PP as well. It opens up tons of builds. It's a very powerful, and you simply cannot go wrong with this Warbond. Yes, there was the stim pistol over there, but I'm not going to waste your time on that. You're not going to be running the stim pistol a lot. It still needs a lot of work. Maybe in the future, it does become better. Cutting Edge is one of those Warbonds that if you're new to the game and you pick up Cutting Edge, you're essentially going to have a tool for every faction within the game. The Localization Confusion booster, yeah, that one's, in my opinion, not the craziest booster. It can be okay, but it's not something that you're going to be dying for. However, on the first page, you also have the one and only Sickle. This is a very solid primary with light armor penetration. It feels good against the bots, the bugs, and the Illuminates. Is it the greatest weapon within the game? No, but it is a good weapon against every faction, and it has very good ammo economy because guess what? It has infinite ammo. As long as you don't overheat it, you're going to be absolutely fine. When it comes to the armor, we have armor that provides 95% resistance to arc damage. You're not going to be running this a bunch unless your team is all running like arc throwers, for example. In that case, it can come in handy, or even blitzers, which we're going to talk about here in a second. But yeah, overall, the Sickle is a great weapon. On the second page, we do have the medium armor penetrating Punisher Plasma. This is also another weapon that works really well against all factions. You can take out the bugs, automatons, and the Illuminates, and it is a very unique feeling weapon in general. Once again, it's medium armor pen and explosive, and keep in mind that energy weapons are very effective against chargers, for example, and it has a pretty decent AoE clear as well. This is one of the most fun weapons for me personally to use. It looks incredible and it just performs well across the board. In combination with that, we do have the stun grenade crowd control option, and till this day it is pretty solid. But that's why I said that the chemical is in the highest tier, because the crowd control that comes with the gas grenade is simply more effective at the moment. That said, stun is still a very solid option. And on the final page, we have two more weapons, which is going to be the Blitzer. This is medium armor pen, infinite ammo, and it absolutely annihilates everything on the bug side. It really does. So if you're looking for a Warbond across the board that has tools for all factions, but one tool that absolutely deletes the bugs, this is going to be the Warbond for you, because Blitzer is on a completely different level when it comes to the Terminates. And then we also have a secondary weapon That is pretty decent, but as you will see, we have so many crazy secondaries within the game. Even the grenade pistol that we went over, in my opinion, is 10 times more valuable than the secondary, and we're just gonna discuss some other ones that are literally game changing. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna put cutting edge in a high A tier for now. Let's see if this moves down on A tier, but currently I think that's exactly where it's gonna stay. Next up, let's discuss Freedom's Flame, because this is also a very, very important warbond within the game. So on the first page, we have the fire resistant armor. So the fire resistant armor is very nice, and not just because of the automatons, because there's the flamethrower, the torture that we're going to talk about here in a second, that a lot of people kind of struggle using without the fire armor. And there's other weapons as well. There's just so many things that raise the value of the fire armor within the game, but we'll get to all of those tools here in a second. Overall, I think that this is a very good armor, and it's definitely worth it. Then we have the Cookout. This weapon, very solid, extremely solid. When it comes to the bugs, we're probably looking at side by BLITZER. And then when it comes to the Illuminates, it's also very good. Against the bots, both BLITZER and Cookout, they're not the greatest, but the Cookout is way better compared to the BLITZER when we're talking about the automatons. But again, it's insane against the bugs, and it's great against the Illuminates. You cannot go wrong with this weapon. You burn enemies, deal a lot of damage, have stagger. Yeah, I mean, this weapon does it all, okay? So great pick on the first page. And on the second page, we have one of my favorite weapons within the game, and that is the Torture. This is a very high skill weapon that you gotta get used to, but once you do, it melts through any enemies within the game. Just think about that for a second. Like, we're talking Bile Titans, Hulks, whatever it is, you are going to be destroying those enemies. And obviously, it's not the best tool against the automatons because you have to be in range. However, it is a very powerful tool against the bugs, and it absolutely melts the Illuminates as well. And on the final page, we have a secondary, which is essentially like a tiny flamethrower secondary. It is a pretty nice addition to your arsenal, but we're going to talk about one secondary that kind of annihilates all of them for me, and it really is taking that secondary slot for a very long time unless it gets destroyed or something crazy is added within the game. Then we also have the Firebomb Hell Pods. This needs a lot of work. Nobody's running this at the moment. Hopefully get some kind of buff, but currently it's not going to be worth a lot of your time. We're going to put Freedom's Flame Warbond in high A tier as well. Now let's talk about Servants of Freedom, because in my opinion, this is also pretty decent. We have the double-edged sickle, aka Dickle, and this one right now is in a spot where it can be utilized very well against the new automaton enemies specifically, because in order to make this work, you do need the armor, the fire-resistant armor. This weapon puts you on fire the longer you shoot. At the beginning, it's light armor pen. The more you shoot, it goes to medium armor pen. And then over 91%, it goes to heavy armor penetrating, okay? However, it also starts burning you, and that's when you need the fire armors within the game. Now, that said, when you combine all of these things, this can be very nice against the automaton enemies. I don't think it's viable against the bugs. Now, on the second page, we have one of the most important items within the game, and that is going to be the Ultimatum. This secondary is honestly game-changing, and when it comes to build crafting, it literally is like moving around and having an extra red stratagem. That's how powerful it is. We're talking deleting Bile Titans, Impalers, Chargers, Tanks, Hulks, Tripods. You can delete all of these enemies. Not only that, but it also closes down the Bile Titan nests. There's just so much value within the secondary in the game that personally, I cannot get rid of it. It's in every single one of my loadouts, because having that oh shit kind of button and just deleting what is in front of you is very strong. When it comes to the armor, this is more of a role-playing kind of armor, right? It is, the idea is pretty cool, right? If you go down, the armor explodes in 1.5 seconds after, and the explosion takes some enemies with you. But it is not a top tier armor that you're going to be using in order to complete the highest difficulties within the game easier or faster. And then on the final page here, we have two items. One of them is the secret grenade. Essentially, you just throw this. You can mark the target. It flies to it. It explodes. On paper, this all sounds pretty good, but we just have so many good grenades within the game that this is not going to be the reason you're going to be looking at this Warbond, okay? And then finally, we have the portable HELLBOMB, one of the most fun and unique stratagems they have added to the game, in my opinion. You can literally just run into hordes of enemies, drop it, and you're good to go. And the cool thing is your friends can activate it while it's on your back. I mean, that's peak Helldivers right there. When it comes to damage, it's a HELLBOMB. It does crazy damage in a massive radius, and you cannot go wrong with it. This is a kind of a tough one because I do believe that it is very good when it comes to the secondary, and the primary can be utilized. The HELLBOMB is also very nice. So I'm not going to be dropping it in B tier for now. We're going to drop it in A tier simply because how much that secondary does affect our gameplay and our build crafting as well. This might move down. Let's take a look at some of the other ones here, and then we can make the decision. Let's talk about the Truth Enforcers. When it comes to the booster, we have Dead Sprint, allows Helldivers to keep sprinting even when they are out of stamina, draining their health instead. Definitely not one of the best boosters within the game. If they do adjust it a little bit, it probably can be, but currently this booster is not going to be on your radar a lot. Then we have the HALT shotgun. In my opinion, this is a pretty decent weapon. It has a very good crowd control, and the damage is very nice, sitting at 385. The capacity, the fire rate, everything on this weapon is really good. It is medium armor penetrating, and you can switch modes to stun mode and damage mode, which, let's be honest, that is pretty sick. And on top of that, for example, you can stun a charger. That is always nice coming from a primary weapon. When it comes to the damage of the warriors, commanders, it absolutely destroys them. It is also very good on the Illuminate side. When it comes to the bots, this isn't going to be my first option, obviously. Overall, this weapon, if we were on a weapon tier list, is easily A tier for me personally, okay? It is a great pick. Then on the second page, we have the Reprimand. Now, this is a medium armor pen SMG. The problem with this weapon, right, is that it has a lot of bloom. And yes, they have lowered the bloom from 50 to 40. I will say after the change and lowering the bloom, the Reprimand definitely does feel better. But since we're talking about the highest difficulty and completing the highest difficulty as efficiently and as easily as possible, this still isn't gonna be a pick. Other than that, it's a pretty solid SMG. I would say that currently it feels better than any other SMG within the game. And then on the final page, we have a secondary weapon that is medium armor penetrating. Essentially, it's like a small purifier, which is very interesting and it can be very solid, but we already covered the ultimatum and the grenade pistol, and both of those items, in my opinion, bring you way more value across the board, no matter which faction you're fighting against. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna throw this into B tier at the moment. Think about it yourself. All of the tools that we went over here is more valuable than what we have in the Truth Enforcers. And that's how we're going about when it comes to this tier list. Is any of the tools from Truth Enforcers gonna offer us an easier clear on higher difficulty compared to all the tools that we went over above it? No, it's simply not the case. Secondary from the servants is better. The primaries from these are much better. Now let's talk about the Urban Legends Warbond, which in my opinion is one of the more unique Warbonds as well, because it is tons of fun. This is the Warbond that brought us the new directional shield, and this is very nice specifically against the squids, and it can be utilized against the bots as well. It's super fun to use, and it can be combined with a bunch of weapons, which is what makes it so nice. For example, if you combine this thing with a crossbow, it is tons of fun to use, right? And it does bring value in terms of survivability. However, then we have the lance. This is a melee weapon that is very, very unique. And the reason I say that is because of its stun functionality, and because, for example, it can absolutely destroy chargers. It can essentially stun most of the targets within the game on every front and does tons of damage, especially if you combine it with the peak physique armor. With this item, you can create a really cool tank build where you combine this with the normal shield stratagem. You pick the heavy peak physique armor, and you feel like unkillable, you can just move through tons of enemies and delete them on the bug side, and actually works really well on the Illuminate side as well. Now, where this kind of falls off, obviously, is going to be the automatons, because you simply do not have time to get close to them as much as you do with the other two factions. But overall, still a very cool and unique addition to the game. The armor on this Warbond is very good, is very nice. Siege ready, increases reload speed of primary weapons by 30%, increases ammo capacity of primary weapons by 20%. Essentially, you have an armor piece that deals with two of the most annoying issues within the game. I'm just being honest here, which is the reload and ammo economy. One armor does that. This is a very high level armor piece that goes well with tons of builds within the game. Then on the second page, we have the flame sentry. Is this going to be something that you're going to be running a lot? Probably not, unless you want to really use like a full-on fire build. For example, if we're talking highest difficulty of the game, there's just better sentries, and I mean much better ones that are just already in the game, and this is not going to be something that you're going to be chasing. Then we have the booster armed resupply pods, mounts a modified AR-23 Liberator to all resupply pods. While this is pretty cool, this is not going to be in your top 4 most picked, for example, boosters that will make your games easier. Is it nice? Yes, it can be, but it's just a normal Liberator on top of your supply pod, okay? That's literally all it is. Final page, though, we have the anti-tank emplacement. And when I'm telling you this thing is ridiculous against the automatons, I mean that from the bottom of my heart. This thing is insane. As long as you place this thing correctly, it can delete anything on the bot front within seconds. Can it be useful against the bugs as well? In some situations, but I think this is mainly an automaton stratagem, and let me tell you once again, it does the job really well. So when it comes to the Urban Legends, I think that overall it has a bunch of good tools when it comes to the armor, the anti-tank emplacement, and the melee weapon can be a lot of value when it comes to build crafting compared to, for example, the Truth Enforcers. So we're going to drop this on a lower A tier here. There's definitely some value in Truth Enforcers. I'm just telling you guys my thoughts after over 2,700 hours of which items I just been using more when I'm playing on the highest difficulty. That's all it is, okay? If you guys enjoy Truth Enforcers more, go ahead and use Truth Enforcers more. If you just want to be a drip diver and have fun, that is completely up to you. That's what the game should be. Just have tons of fun and create cool memories with your friends. That's what it's all about, okay? Okay, now let's talk about the Viper Commandos. This is a tough one, I'm not gonna lie, because there's a few things that are very good here, but the rest is like doo-doo, you know what I mean? So the armor piece is very good. It is peak physique armor. It means that it increases melee damage by 100%, improves weapons handling with less dragon weapon movement. This does make a bunch of the weapons, or should I say honestly, all the weapons just feel 10 times better, okay? We're talking Eruptor feels incredible. The crossbow feels incredible. Essentially, every weapon you use with this just feels so much better. On the other hand, we have the Liberator Carbine, a weapon that if it was deleted out of the game today, nobody would ever notice, and you would never, ever, period, pick this up to play on the highest difficulty of the game. Once again, if the goal is to complete these missions easily and effectively, that is simply never going to happen, okay? Then on the second page, we have the Bushwhacker. It does tons of damage. It deletes bugs. It has 2 modes. You can shoot in single fire or take all of the shots at the same time and literally just delete everything in front of you. However, once again, when it comes to build crafting value, we have the Ultimatum, we have the grenade pistol, and I do believe those carry way more value than this specific secondary in the game. For the armor, we already talked about it, but this is going to be the heavy version of peak physique, which is something that I like to run with my tank build on the lance. Then on the final page, we have the throwing knives. Is it pretty cool? Yes, the idea is very nice. They can be fun, but you're not going to be utilizing this once again from the perspective that we're breaking down these Warbonds, which is the highest difficulty of the game. Don't get me wrong though, they're tons of fun, and if that's what you're looking for, go ahead and do that, it is gonna give you that value, which is once again a lot of fun. Now, the last thing is the experimental infusion. And this is where it gets tough for me, because experimental infusion is one of the best boosters in the game, man. It really is. It's just stuck with a Warbond that doesn't have much value compared to the other ones, apart from this booster. So it is in a very unique spot. When you stim, it also temporarily increases movement speed and damage reduction. And when you combine this with something, for example, the medium armor with extra padding, you literally move around like a madman and have tons of survivability at the same time. It's just such a good booster, man. I don't know what we're gonna do with this. Technically, if there was one between A and B, that's probably where I would drop it. But okay, you know what? We're gonna keep it at top of B for now and see what happens as we move forward. Okay, now let's talk about the Steeled Veterans. On the first page, we have the Liberator Concussive. This just got a buff for its fire rate. It went all the way up to 400, but it still doesn't feel that good. Can you use it and make it work with some of the items within the game? Absolutely. You can combine it with the Laser Rover, for example, or the normal Rover that just, you know, has the Liberator on it, and you can clear. You can let them clear as you're kind of staggering the enemies, but it's still not going to be as powerful as some of the other options that you can create. For example, if this was a weapon tier list, I would probably throw it in B or C tier still, even with all the changes. Once again, we're talking about the highest difficulty of the game. Then we have the Revolver Senator. This is a heavy armor penetrating secondary weapon. Feels incredible, looks awesome. The scope still needs to be changed, but apart from that, it is very good, guys. It is actually very nice. We come back to the same issue. For me personally, I have the Ultimatum that can literally delete hordes of enemies, and it can delete the toughest enemies within the game. So am I really gonna be running the Senator? The answer for me personally is no. That said, it is a very, very solid secondary. So if you're looking for a heavy hitting secondary weapon that deals with heavy armored enemies, this is gonna be the one for you. Then on the second page, we have one of the most fan favorite weapons, which is the Breaker Incendiary, which did get a nerf to ammo economy, and they dropped its magazines from 6 to 4, which I don't know. I don't agree with that, but I mean, it is what it is. The problem with this weapon currently, because of that nerf, is that if you want to make this work, and if you want this to feel very good as it used to, you need to run it with the supply backpack. Now, once you do run it with the supply backpack, this weapon goes to S tier instantly. Against the bugs, it's ridiculously good, and that's where it goes to S tier with the supply backpack. Once again, on the butt side, it's decent, but nothing crazy. But this also deletes the Illuminates as well. So it is a great pick as long as you understand that the ammo economy and the magazine amount is not really good at the moment, and you have to use a specific stratagem to really take it to that next level. When it comes to the armor, we have Servo Assisted, increases throwing range by 30%, provides 50% limb health, can be very nice. And then on the final page, we have the Dominator. This is still a very solid weapon, guys. Very, very solid weapon. Damage sitting at 275, capacity is at 15, fire rate is at 250 with medium armor penetrating rounds, and it gets the job done. Is it a little bit clunky? Yes. When I'm running this, peak physique is a blessing. And by the way, it gets the job done no matter which faction you're going against. So that is definitely something to keep in mind. When it comes to the booster, it's flexible reinforcement budget, reduces time until new reinforcements are granted once they've been depleted. I mean, let's be honest, who's ever going to use this? Like nobody, unless it's reworked. You're not going to be running this ever. So what we're going to do is we're going to throw this into B tier. Okay, now let's talk about the Polar Patriots. This is a pretty interesting one, guys, and you're going to see why here in a second. On the first page, we have the Tenderizer. This weapon also just received a buff. Its damage went all the way up to 105, capacity 35, and honestly, compared to the other ARs, I feel like it is in a pretty decent spot. I wish it was medium armor pen, and I think if it was, it would have much more value. But currently, the problem with light pen weapons is that they don't give you much reason to use them. And what I mean by that is, yes, they have 105 damage per bullet, but their ammo economy isn't as great, and they don't have medium armor pen. Meanwhile, you have explosive weapons such as the CROSSBOW, ERUPTOR, the Scorcher, and many others, and a bunch of shotguns as well, that just do what these weapons do, but easier, better, have better AoE clear as well. And on top of everything, they have better ammo economy. So there's no reason for you to run ARs if you're trying to complete the highest difficulty as easily as possible. Then we also have the motivational shocks booster. And I'm gonna be honest with you, I have never ever seen anybody who joins me pick up motivational shocks. So yeah, you can decide from there. Then for the armor, we have another armor with servo assisted. We already discussed this perk on some of the other Warbonds. Then on the second page, we have a PUMMELLER. This was a weapon that a lot of people enjoyed. Then it went through a lot of changes. It did get like a slight buff currently, but still not enough for you to run this weapon in order to make your runs, you know, much more efficient or easier or whatever. It just doesn't feel good at the moment. The incendiary impact grenades are pretty nice, right? You're gonna throw this, boom, explosion, damage, fire, all the good stuff. But at the same time, you have gas grenades and other tools that are also very, very powerful. So if you're playing, for example, against the bugs, would you use this over the gas nades? The answer is no. If you're playing against the automatons, would you use this over the thermites? The answer is no. If you're playing against the squids, would you use this over the gas? The answer is still no. However, after the gas, this would probably be your better pick against the squids. On the other hand, you can just pick up the normal incendiaries as well. So it is a pretty fun grenade, but there's just other options that we have that will be more effective. And then on the final page, we have the Purifier. Now, this is why I said it is an interesting Warbond, because Purifier is precisely what makes it interesting. This is a primary weapon that is easily one of the best primary weapons within the game. And the cool thing is that is true for each faction. You can make this work against the bugs, against the automatons, and against the squids. And it essentially has incredible single target damage sitting at 500. The ammo economy on this one is wild because it has two modes. You can shoot it normally, which does way less damage and doesn't have a lot of explosive area, a lot of AoE. However, you can charge it up as well and shoot that way, dealing 500 damage and increasing the explosion radius. Now, the cool thing is the amount of shots stay the same even when you charge it. So the ammo economy is ridiculously good because you can shoot one charge shot and delete a bunch of enemies at the same time and not worry about ammo economy at all. So this, in my opinion, is an S tier weapon across the board. And this is probably what's going to keep this Warbond alive. If Purifier is not in here, in my opinion, this goes to doo-doo tier. On the secondaries, we have the Verdict. Damage is 125, capacity at 10, all that kind of stuff. Medium armor penetrating. But on the final Warbond, you'll see that we have a very nice secondary weapon that was added to the game. And on top of that, you also have the Senator. So I believe there's a bunch of better options when it comes to secondaries. So what we're going to do is we're going to throw this into B tier as well, but right over here above these two, because I do believe that's how good the Purifier is. However, the Viper Commandos booster is also so nice. Essentially, these two can kind of like a share slot, okay? And finally, let's talk about Borderline Justice, the final addition to the game. Let's start off with the armor here. The perk is Gunslinger, increases sidearm reload speed by 40%, sidearm draw holster speed increased by 50%, and sidearm recoil reduced by 70%. This is a really cool armor piece that makes the feel of playing with the secondary weapons exceptionally fun. It really does. But that's what it is. It will make it fun. In some situations, it does feel good. For example, you know, to just swap to your ultimatum so fast, or your senator or whatever. Does it feel good? Absolutely. But does it have more value in terms of survivability compared to some armors? No. Does it have more value in terms of ammo economy or overall reload speed for your primaries? No. Does it prevent explosive damage? Once again, it's going to be no. So it all depends on where your priority is. If you're looking for fun, this is a great armor piece. If you're looking for efficiently completing the highest difficulties, then probably this armor piece isn't for you. Then when it comes to the weapon, the DEADEYE, this is a more of a precision weapon with medium armor penetrating. The damage is sitting at a whopping 300, which in the game currently, when it comes to precision weapons, if we compare it to the DCS, for example, is pretty high. DCS is only sitting at around 200. And on top of that, this weapon also staggers. One thing that I've noticed is that it feels a little bit weird sometimes. It feels like the shots are just not hitting. I don't know why that is. I've noticed that in controller, actually, it feels better. But then again, it is still a little bit wonky when it comes to landing your shots. When it comes to the bugs, you're not going to be probably using this weapon as your main primary weapon all the time. However, when it comes to the bots and the Illuminates, it feels good. As long as the shots are hitting, for example, the Overseers on the Illuminate side, you can kill them in one shot. And the Berserkers, Devastators, you can take them out with one shot to the head, which is very cool. The animation on the weapon is nice. The sound design is very nice. And across the board, I do think that even though I personally like the scope on this one compared to some of the other scopes within the game, I feel like the scopes in Helldivers 2 need a little bit more work. They feel a little bit clunky and they're just not clean. That's what I'm trying to say. And I would love to hear your thoughts about this in the comment section below. On the second page is the secondary that I just mentioned while we were going over the previous Warbond, and that's the Talon, sitting at 200 damage, and it is medium armor pen as well, and it has a heating system, and 200 damage for a secondary weapon with medium pen is very nice. But you got to be careful. If you overheat it, then you have to go into a reload. So overall, I feel like this is a pretty solid secondary weapon within the game if you're looking for something that deals a lot of damage. And then on the third slot is one of the most game-changing items within the game, period. And that is going to be the one and only hover pack. Guys, listen to me. If you're trying to pick up a tool that literally changes the way you play the game, this is going to be the tool for you. The crazy positioning that you can have with this is something that no other stratagem offers within the game. And it's not even arguable. It's not even close. The jump pack cannot do that. It's not in the same universe when it comes to positioning. The insane plays that you can make with this stratagem alone, for me, takes the fun to the next level. And it doesn't even matter which faction you're fighting against. Now, I'm not going to sit here and lie to you and tell you that this is as effective against the bots as it is against the bugs, right? Against the bugs, this thing is incredible. You can fly around, burn targets under you, then you can just take crazy positions on like mountains and buildings and cliffs and rain havoc on the enemies from above and whatnot. It's just extremely good. On the bot side, it gives you the ability to position in crazy spots, which then gives you the ability to take out missions from miles away with, for example, the Quasar Cannon or the anti-tank emplacement, which, as we discussed, is ridiculously powerful against automatons. So it opens up a different, and I mean a completely different way to play Helldivers 2, and that's why I think it's so valuable for build crafting within the game right now. Then we also have the Dynamite. This is a really cool addition to the game in terms of the idea behind it. You can set the fuse time from anywhere from 5 seconds to 1 minute, which can open up doors to some fun plays. But is it like a top tier grenade in terms of performance? Not really. If you're looking top tier, that's where the hover pack is. And we also have the new booster, which essentially every time you kill large enemies, now have a small chance of dropping samples on death, capped at 10 drops per mission. Currently, this doesn't feel like something that is crazy, but in the future, if they do add some kind of progression, this can come in handy a lot. Like if you need more and more samples, running this would be really cool because, yeah, those extra 10 samples means that you're getting those upgrades or progression or of any kind faster. So that will be very, very nice. I do think that it should probably be moved up to 15 maybe. That would be cooler, but I mean, I'm never going to say no to extra samples as long as I have something to sink them into. So the way I'm going to rate this is purely off of build crafting and just how much it affects the gameplay in general. And I think that it affects the gameplay like no other stratagem within the game. So we are going to drop this into lower A tier. I think that one item, that one stratagem completely changes the game. You can position in different ways. It even opens up a way to play stealth, right? Like you can get to crazy positions, snipe everything from far away, move on to the next mission, use your Quasar or your EATs, destroy everything from far away. It just honestly changes the game. So that's why I think it's going to be a lower A tier. Now, if you're a new player and thinking which Warbonds you should pick up, let's say you don't have any of them, I would honestly just follow this tier list. Like, just follow from the top and just follow this like it is. I think that you'll find that you're gonna be unlocking some of the best tools just from the beginning, and you're gonna have a bunch of builds for every kind of scenario within the game. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, make sure to slap a like, sub to the channel. It took a lot of time to make this one, so I would really, really appreciate it. As always, stay positive, stay disciplined, and I'll see you all on the next one.